Today we're joined by Vijay, founder and lead developer at RNDM, where they're building AI consumer applications. RNDM is building Atlas, an agentic vault built on top of concentrated liquidity market makers, generating yields on stablecoins. Vijay brings nearly a decade of experience in AI and software development, 4 years in DeFi, and he's been building on the Aptos blockchain with the Move language for the past 10 months. I've had the privilege to pick his brains on his experience building on the Aptos blockchain, his general insights and feedback for the Aptos Move language, and some thoughts that he would like to share for developers looking to build on the Aptos blockchain. This was jam-packed with some interesting conversations, so I hope you like the show. So I wanted to ask you, why did you decide to build Atlas on the Aptos blockchain?
Oh, it was initially I had been always like a ETH or like a EVM developer. And, even if you look at my Telegram handle, it's like Vijay_ETH. So it was like I was a complete ETH Maxi. But at the same time, how Maxis are, right? It just becomes almost like a cult. And I thought that's not good. So I just wanted to explore other non-EVM chains. So I was doing that. And then I saw Movement and other projects and everything doing something called Move. And then I saw okay, wow, this is actually from Meta, from Facebook. And then I thought I guess to be completely honest with you, it was just Meta which brought me over, in a sense,
Yeah.
it was I was they can't be too wrong, because they always get it right. So that's how it started. And then I was diving in, and at that time, smart accounts were not that popular in EVM. I mean, it was getting started as well in 2024, but then I thought wow. So there is already a language which has this sort of resource account separation, and you could have what is mind-blowing to me, I mean, maybe it was just normal for you guys, but it was mind-blowing to me at that time. Wow, I deploy using this address a contract, and then I can go on the Explorer, and I could just literally see the smart contract. Whereas, because in EVM, right, you always have a contract address, a CA, and then you just go to the CA, and then you have all the modules written there, and the deployer is someone else. You'll have some other address, and it was just wow, everything is connected. You just have one address, and then you have that as a resource account, and then here are your modules. That's what hooked me. Yeah.
That's very interesting. So it sounds like you were kind of hooked with the whole Meta. The name does give you a level of credibility, but then you stuck around once you kind of dived in and kind of looked at the Move language and the differences. Especially you come from the Ethereum world. It must have been super clear to you, the differences and some of the weaknesses that were addressed by this languages and well. So we'll dive into all of that, in our conversation today. You've been working with Move for 10 months now, and you must be an expert at it. I wanted to kind of hear your honest take on this language. Just kind of tell me what you've noticed about the Move language, what you liked, and also just things that you were this is kind of an interesting design choice.
One point was one thing which unfortunately I would say start with sort of not the minus, but the syntax. The syntax is quite hard, to be honest with you.
It's Rust inspired, right?
Yeah, and so I'm I have my background is in AI, and with always experience in AI. I always start everything with Python, strongly typed. The indentation part, and it was always used to throw me off. So that's one thing which we have to live with anyway on the syntax side. But that was sort of the initial hurdle. And then I had to learn, some of the parts, okay, this is how you call the function, this is how events are generated. And then, okay, this is how I, run it. And then I have a profile. So those sort of things. So that learning curve, I guess, can't be avoided. But obviously, these days, with the documentation and, the way you have generating code and stuff, you can be a lot faster. But this was the thing, right? Maybe people right now will reach my stage, 2-3 months instead of 10 months due to the speed with LLMs.
You bring up a very interesting point there. I think Move is, especially for people who've never used it, it's a scary language. When you when you hear the word, oh, it's Rust inspired, whoever has zero experiences with Rust and are kind of grounded with Python and JavaScript, they're like, oh, I don't want to do anything with that. And I got to be honest with you, I was one of those people. I was like, Rust seems hard, and I've heard great things about Rust. but there's such a huge learning curve that a lot of people just fall off of it before they get hooked by it. So
Mm.
I kind of had a similar perspective on Move language, but what I was surprised by was now we have Aptos Move 2.0, right? They released it like a year ago, and they made a bunch of improvements on syntax. Like one big one where I was like, "Oh, this is super cool," was you know how if you want to use like a function defined inside of another Move module,
Mhm.
let's say object or whatever, you would need to first bring that module name and then do colon colon and access
Yeah.
the function, and then you have to put in the object as the argument, and it was kind of backwards, right? Compared to where like in Python you would it's in a different order. But
Yeah.
now you can do everything in the method call. Like so if you have an object, you can put the object and then do colon colon, and the object will have all of the available functions defined in the object model. So you don't need to like have a complex long syntax anymore. It's more intuitive and it's just a direct method call. So like I think the developers, the engineers behind the Move language understood this kind of friction point when it comes to syntax is it's a bit unintuitive. So they made a lot of improvements and they're constantly making new improvements. I mean, I'm in the Slack channel and they're like, "Oh, what if we do this? What if you do that?" every week. And I'm like, "Guys, slow down." Like I need to learn all these things to like let the developers know. But they're doing amazing work there
Okay.
on like the syntax front. Yeah.
Yep, and also amazing work on the docs as well. Like I find the docs really easy to go, like when I was working as well. Like it's very easy to build like small projects. Like if someone were to ask me if I was like a few months back, like similar to that, like can I just come in 0 to 1, just build a simple greeter contract or something like that? It won't take much time at all. The docs are very well defined, so you should be able to go in. It's like once you start building more and more complex use cases, then obviously you need more time. And then once you start to build more robust contracts, I guess then you need more time. But otherwise, yeah, it's much, much better now. Yep, agreed.
Let's now talk about some unique features or concepts in Move that you've noticed that stood out to you compared to, other smart contract languages like Solidity.
So one of the things is obviously like I'm from more on the agent side, right? And the agents and AI side. So one thing is the intent solver part. There are of course many ways of, attacking this problem and solving it. So on the EVM side, for example, when we deploy an agent, you would have like, let's say a resource, in which case like a smart contract. And within the smart contract, users say, let's say deposit some USDC or any other asset, and then the agent then takes that out. You have like some form of multiple approaches. Like at a very, very basic level, you have like not sharding, but maybe even the simplest one, an agent wallet. The agent wallet then takes that and then performs a set of actions, and you will have like some LLM at the end, ultimately, which is saying like, okay, if you do this, you achieve this objective. And once that objective is achieved, then the agent then returns the things back to the users. Or if the users say, no, I want, the capital back, then the agent. So this is a very, very basic view of the agent vault pattern, for example. And to achieve
Okay.
this agent vault pattern, you would have the intent approach, where you would have the intent where the user specifies some of the intent part. And then the solver part is the agent actually executing and solving it. So in
Hmm.
Solidity, what would generally happen is like you would have this, when you deploy the contract, you would have like some kind of admin privileges or some privileges for the agent. And with those privileges, the agent will then take it out and then will do all that and so on. And what is interesting is like there are like some edge cases. There are some advantages to Solidity as well with this approach. But the main thing what I found when I was like seeing this, and this was around like Dev Connect last year, and I saw like, wow, so you could actually do more like atomicity. So you could have like the agent doing one step at a time. Like it could just handle like one user, handle the next user, and so on. And also at the same time, since the resource account is like separate, you could have like a completely different workflow where you could have a lot of the things done off chain. So you could, for example, pair it with, say, GCP or AWS or some server. The agent could be on some server with a TEE, combine that with a contract, and then you could do all these set of actions. So you could have the best of Web 2 and Web 3, and at the same time the users, because in the end the users, right, yes, they care about decentralization, but they also want a good UX, and they also want something where they get like good yield, because ultimately if you depend on a human, the human will make a mistake, or the humans will have a different motivation. So I would rather like, let everything run on the agent side. And yes, the LLM can also make mistakes, of course, but in the end, like, they won't be like malicious, hopefully. They'll just be like, like more like infrastructure mistakes or some other mistakes, but it will not be malicious like humans. So those are sort of my thought process. So, and with that, like what I thought is like with this kind of a resource separation, that offers actually a unique workflow for agents. And it'll be actually an advantage for agents.
I think this is a good opportunity to actually just talk a little bit about your project, Atlas, because Atlas is building a vault-based, right, DeFi platform generating yields on stablecoins, right? So maybe could you kind of briefly talk about Atlas and why? Kind of also just explain what you just said about like our resource accounts allowing atomicity and how that like helps, Atlas, how you implemented Atlas.
So Atlas, like our thing was, the Greek god who has like the weight of the world on the shoulders. But at the same time, we wanted to have like a fun twist. Atlas is almost like a butler. And what users want is like when they deposit USDC, there are like multiple ways in which they can get you through lending, through borrowing, through leverage. This one with Atlas, all it tries to do is maximize farming or maximize incentives. So our goal is like for users, when they deposit USDC, they get the maximized yield out of incentives. So we are not just wanting to optimize yield, we want to maximize yield with minimal risk. And with that in mind, like we didn't want to go like a traditional vault. Like if you look at a traditional vault, you'll have a bunch of users and they will all deposit and you'll have like one risk threshold. And users, let's say user A would be like very low risk guy, user X or Y could be like very high risk guy. All of them are bunched in together into the same vault, and you have like a share token which you get. So that sort of a concept was a sort of like slightly old vault concept, which is what we are trying to challenge, like not just as like other agent projects as well. That's the sort of the challenge where like you have the flexibility of, one user having like, trying to choose like a different vault strategy or a different strategy. But at the same time, they also want to have like, access to that, like everyone is treated almost equally within that particular strategy. So that sort of thing is possible with agents. And also like we don't need to have like a curator, in the sense like agent acts as a curator. You don't have a human curator like I explained before. So with all of that, that was what was our motivation behind building Atlas. And that's what like, keeps us up during the day and night. Like we want to make sure like we build something where users can come in, anyone can like deposit, and you have like multiple strategies, and then the agent then executes in the back end, delivers yield for them.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, me as a very beginner DeFi user, there's so many great DeFi apps on Aptos, and I think sometimes I just because of my pure lack of knowledge, I feel like I'm not fully utilizing a lot of these tools that are offered. What really like resonated with me was you said that users just want to deposit their stablecoin and get maximum yield somehow. Like users just want the platform to figure it out. Like I don't care how you do it, figure it out and give me the maximum yield. I mean, for pro traders and pro finance people, they probably want to do like hands-on. They want to take control of what they do because they know what they're doing. But there's a wide range of users who don't have the financial background that these professionals have. And I think oftentimes these user base are ignored and because they don't know what to do. But I think what you are building with Atlas is kind of bridging that gap, appealing to the users who still want to kind of engage in these financial services, but they just don't know what to do. So I think that's really exciting thing about Atlas. Now I want to circle back to your insight as a Ethereum Maxi trying out Aptos Move and ended up building an application here. What would you, if there are some couple things that you would like to tell Solidity developers on, hey, if you want to try to build on Aptos using Aptos Move, you should probably know these before you like start building. If there's stuff like that, what would you tell to a Solidity developer?
Oh, the one thing I would say is like I would start with the easy parts first. So once you have the move contract deployed and then interacting with that, you have almost the same TypeScript file. And this is the coolest part, right? Like once you build out the TypeScript, like not like an SDK. I mean, in essence, like you could just use it almost like a Solidity contract. So I would sort of like tell them that, like, once a contract is deployed, you could probably start by looking at existing contracts and try to use that, or try to use contracts which have SDKs in it, test it out so that you understand how you can interact with it and how you can use the flow. So, because what happened is, when you directly start looking at the move code, you're like, oh my God, like this is completely crazy, like, very different. And then like people get overwhelmed and then they leave or they don't actually try it. So it was the same for me. Like when I was first starting, when I was checking all that, I was like, oh my God, okay, I can't do this. Like I was actually trying to ask like other people, like, okay, can you develop? And this is why I started writing the code, right? Like initially it was done, like I was asking others, and then I found out that there are not many Move developers. And also it'll be like, very expensive to hire them as well. So it was sheer necessity, I would say. Like I thought like, okay, I have to learn.
Yeah.
And then I started. Yeah. So the other thing I would say for Solidity developers is like the structuring of the code itself, like the events, all of that, it's quite similar. So they could bring their design patterns from there and sort of like adapt it. And once they learn the syntax, once they get a grasp of all of that, they could quickly build it out.
I think for me, when I first started learning Move, the biggest differences that I noticed was how contract storages work. So you know how on Solidity, it's usually a giant hash map and you're storing everything in there. Whereas on Aptos, you define these things called structs.
Yep.
And then these structs can be stored inside of an account as a resource, right? And then on top of that, we have the object model where object is basically just another account that exists on the blockchain.
Exactly.
And then you can start storing your resources in those objects. And now that resource becomes completely transferable and ownable because changing ownership of that resource is a simple field change, property change on the object. Like these things was really hard to understand at first because you kind of have to understand like the ownership of everything. Like, okay, I created this struct and I created this resource. Where is it stored? Who owns this? And so there's this concept of ownership in Aptos Move that was quite tricky to understand at first because it was just so foreign to me. But if you think about it, it makes complete sense because when you're writing smart contracts, you are mostly dealing with something of value. And when you are dealing with something of value, you need to clearly define ownership of that in every single scenario. So having this design built into the language is actually super beneficial when you're building applications. But like I said, I think it's a bit of a learning curve, especially if you're coming from the Ethereum world. I would love to hear your experience being onboarded to Aptos. So like when you came to Aptos for the first time, you never coded in the Move language. What was the process like? Did you just go straight to the developer documentation? Did you find everything that you were looking for easily? Were there any friction points or unclear documentation? What was the onboarding experience like for you?
It was actually like I was quite surprised. Like everything was like, quite well organized. And then I looked at the Aptos dev page and then I just went through that. I just thought like, okay, let me just try to run it. So initially what I was doing was like I was literally just clicking buttons, like how they call it, like script kiddie, right? So you just like
Yeah.
just do it step by step. And then like, wow, it actually worked. Like everything worked right away. And it just worked first time, which never happens, Whenever I learn,
It
like it
never
always like
happens.
something crashes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like very surprised. But then this is the problem, right? If everything works, you don't actually learn what is on the inside. So with the other things, right? Because you're like it doesn't work, so you're like actually banging your head, like okay, this is the issue. And then by the time you actually figured out a lot of the pipeline. Whereas over here, it was like everything worked first time. I was quite also surprised, like how I had like all like a prompt flow as well. The beginner tutorials, which I think was a nice touch.
Yeah.
Like not, just simply directly just press a button and then it just runs and it's done. So like, okay, this is when you're sending the actual transaction to deploy. Yeah.
That's really good to hear, especially since you were like a Ethereum developer, because I think it's really important when like developers who come from a different ecosystem, whether that be Ethereum or Solana or wherever, if they struggle to get started on your blockchain, that's probably a bad sign because they're probably the most knowledgeable developers that you can appeal to. So I think it's really great that you were able to get things working right away. I think that's a good sign of our current status of the dev portal. I'm still unsatisfied with this, so I'm working with a team to, improve like the flow of it. So when people land on the dev portal page, I want to highlight the beginner guides even more so that they can just get to it with a click of a button and they just start something and just have a first move module deployed in like under 10 minutes. That's kind of the goal here, so that they at least have something out there. And I think that's what gets developers kind of hooked. They're like, oh, that worked. I got something to work, and that's the best feeling, right? That's the best feeling as a developer. We always seen that green message saying success or whatever. So I want to provide that experience to all of the developers that come to Aptos. So, but it's great that it's at a pretty good state right now. I actually wanted to ask you because what I want to kind of facilitate as Avril is I want to create a vibrant, open, supportive developer community at Aptons. Because like people like you guys are such wonderful human beings, like outside of the internet persona, right? You guys have so much insights and so much knowledge and so much experience building on Aptos. And I want to make sure that we have a community where they feel comfortable just like sharing ideas, talk to each other, make friends, collaborate on things. So I want to kind of hear from you because my honest take is that I feel like right now we're kind of lacking that culture within our developer community. Is there a preferred platform for you to kind of have these kind of just chill vibe developer hanging out kind of platform? I mean, the popular ones are Discord and Telegram, but I wanted to hear what you prefer and what your thoughts on how we can kind of create that culture.
So the one thing is obviously like, everyone uses Telegram and everyone is like, communicating on that. I think the one problem is it's not just Aptos specific. I think it's generally as a space. Like when I look at it, like 2022, 2023 and stuff, like everyone was very collaborative in general. Like there is so much sharing of ideas. And right now I feel like it's more and more becoming more like slightly more PvP in the sense like as soon as you like start talking about it, then the other projects they try to like use that or like have that, and then it becomes more competitive, and then like who goes first. Like I think that's the one thing which I observed a lot. So it's not necessarily a platform. I would say it's more about, just having this. And I think maybe the old school approach of actually having like IRL events are better. Like something out of the box would be like, have more like these kind of like almost like hackathon like events, and maybe with some kind of an objective, like maybe you can have like, I don't know, like an Aptos public good or like something out of it, coming out of it, and then something more goal oriented and something more IRL, I would say, would also be cool. Like, you'd naturally have people sharing ideas when they meet. And for me, for example, like when I was at the Aptos experience, I could already like, like discuss ideas or like, get a lot more done than, like have, 100 messages on Telegram or like 100 messages on any other channel. Those kind of light bulb moments come with actual IRL interactions, I guess.
Yeah. I wish we could do more IRL events. I think because like you said, you just bond with people when you meet them in person and like see them face to face and and have fun times together, right? I think the challenge there is because Aptos is facing a global audience and we have developers everywhere. Like I think one privilege that I get as a DevRel working in this Web3 space is that I get to engage with people literally all around the world that I would usually not have a chance to engage with, right? Which is a great advantage that comes with remote environment. But like you said, it's harder to create that bond and feeling of like belonging and creating a community because at the end of the day, you're only seeing text and some PFP on Discord and who knows who's behind that, right? And maybe that's why I kind of want to do this, what I'm doing with you right now, a series, and kind of meet with all the core developers in our ecosystem because I want to make friends, but also just so that people can see who's behind all these amazing products that are being built on Aptos.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, this could be like a good compromise. Like maybe we could have like, I don't know, like a town hall kind of a session or something like that, or like a virtual hackathon or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll think about it. Well, I think we chatted a lot today. I guess on a final note, I guess I want to ask you if people want to follow your journey, right? Learn more about Atlas, your product, and what you're doing. How can they kind of get connected with you and learn more about the product? And also, after you say that, can you maybe share a message or some insights that you can share with people who are new to Aptos or are thinking about building on the Aptos blockchain?
Yeah, for us, like, you can join our Discord, you can join, Atlas RNDM channel. So we have like, the main random channel and then the Atlas random channel. They could join both of those Twitter channels and also just to get updates on products, just get entertained. We made sure the Atlas random is more like entertaining, like have like more videos and stuff. And
Yeah.
also like they could join our Discord as well to get informed and use our product. And, if they're interested in testing or like, being early in the product, like currently when we're doing the initial beta testing, like we want like people to just try it out, give feedback. So that's on the communication part. In terms of like advice, what I would give to people is like, the simplest advice is get your hands dirty. Like you just have to start coding. It's going to look intimidating. It does look hard. And the other thing I would say is like, a lot of people are going to use AI. They're going to use like, ChatGPT or any of that, and like, just use an LLM to generate code. I would say on the initial phase to avoid or try to minimize it. Because like a lot of the code is like generated, and I would say at the same time not to completely discard it because it'll give you like a good head start. So like a happy medium, like use a little bit of it and generate some code so that you get a feel of the syntax, and then combine that. Maybe they could be a lot faster. Maybe instead of me taking like more time, like they could be like just 2-3 months they could be out there with a full product. So that's my advice. Just get your hands ready, just start doing it. Looks intimidating, but it's doable. If I can do it, anyone can do it.
Amazing advice. Thank you, Vijay, for hopping on for this call. And I look forward to what you keep building on Aptos.
Thanks for having me. Speak to you soon.
Thank you.